Yeah, indeed. It is, though, this issue of taxes in the economy that has been the main driver of debate and division between the two main candidates in this Conservative leadership race. We know that for the first couple of weeks, Rishi Sunak wanted to portray himself as a fiscally conservative potential Prime Minister, someone who would, in the end, drive down inflation before helping to impose tax cuts. Now, he would say this announcement today is entirely in line with that he wants to still see inflation brought under control before there are tax cuts, but that this is a radical policy to bring down tax in the long term. The basic rate of income tax would fall by 4 pence before the end of this decade, though it is a very long-term plan indeed. It would cost around £80 million. Rishi Sunak says it would be paid for not by borrowing, that Liz Truss would want to do, but rather by higher economic growth. As though for Liz Truss, again, she's attacking the former Chancellor, saying that he is flip-flopping all around the place, and this is a sign, in many ways, her camp would suggest, of desperation from Rishi Sunak, saying that Liz Truss would cut taxes in 7 weeks, not in 7 years. Along with, of course, cancelling that national insurance rise. And why is this really important? Why is this announcement by Rishi Sunak being made today, Alistair? Well, it is not a coincidence that the ballot papers for Conservative members have gone out this morning. 160,000 of them will be receiving that in the days to come. And there is a sense that, given the fact that Rishi Sunak is behind in almost every metric in this race, that he needed to do something. Will this be a game changer, or will it feed into that narrative that he is behind and he's now willing to try almost anything to try and change people's minds?
On that point, brilliant analysis. I didn't interrupt because I knew you'd have it in one. But here are 2 points from my perspective. One is he left the window open back in the spring statement that we both remember so very clearly when he announced extra help for people on energy bills and what have you. And the big punchline was, I will cut income tax by a penny before the next general election. He's quadrupled that. You either believe it or you don't believe it. But here's the problem for me, and I said it at the beginning of this show, Darren, is he's gone from tax cuts being the stuff of fairy tales to being morally bankrupt, to being, all right, well, I'll have a bit of it, and then going absolutely full tonto on tax cuts. That's going to be quite difficult to swallow as a credible intellectual exercise.
Well, in many ways, he would suggest he is being consistent in all of this. And we heard him on the radio this morning saying that he is someone, as a Chancellor, that has talked for a long time about wanting to bring down taxation. This is a long-term plan to do it, and it is consistent with not doing it right now because he thinks it would be damaging, it would fuel inflation, and that's fairy tale economics, that he wants to get inflation under control first, the tax cuts then come. I think there are 2 problems about that narrative. First of all, that's not where the narrative was, if you like, a couple of weeks ago at the start of this race. He does seem to be changing the dial because he is somewhat behind. And also, I think overall, and this was entirely his time as Chancellor, is that he talked an awful lot. He talked a good game on tax if you are a Conservative, that he wanted to be a tax-cutting Conservative, talked about Margaret Thatcher a lot. But ultimately, and lots of this was not necessarily in his control, there was a pandemic, but in the end he was also the Chancellor at which the tax burden reached its highest level in 70 to 80 years. And there was always that awkward juxtaposition between the rhetoric of Rishi Sunak, who talked himself about being a tax-cutting Chancellor, but one in the end that has actually seen the tax burden, as I say, higher than at any stage since the end of the Second World War. And it is that perceived inconsistency, I think, that might well do him some damage, as you say, among those Conservative members as they decide to vote. Also, we have to look at the momentum in the campaigns as well a little bit. Alistair, Nadine Zahawi, the current Chancellor, has come out for Liz Truss today. Brandon Lewis did so yesterday. There is a sense that this is now her election to lose, if you like, and Rishi Sunak is very much playing catch-up.
Yeah, and final point on that, your brilliant analysis of the desperation, arguably, of the situation we're in. Rishi's gone back to she's just a Remainer Ramona again on talking about agricultural workers and trying to be more helpful to Britain's hard-pressed farmers, which I, for one, say hurrah for that. But it's another quite nasty blow from the Sunak camp.
Yeah, it is, and we have seen these kind of bitter personal blows, haven't we? And I'm not entirely sure it's doing the Conservative Party any good. And we've heard from some of the kind of the doyens of the Conservative Party, if you like, the people who've been around the block a few times, who've seen these leadership campaigns before, well, it's telling everyone to calm down, essentially. In the end, the enemies, they would say, are not within the party. They are, of course, of the Labour opposition and the political opponents. And by chucking mud around, as you say, whether it's on Brexit or whether it's on people's personal wealth, it is not doing the party any good. But this is politics, and politics is a pretty brutal game. It is a competitive sport, Alistair. It is often hands-on, and it can get a bit brutish and a bit bitter and a bit nasty at times. And we are seeing that. The big question, of course, is that at the end of all of this process, when that announcement is made on September 5th, whenever who wins takes over on September 6th, can the party genuinely unite behind whoever wins, or will it remain as fractious and divided as it has over the last couple of months?